For those who maybe don't know, Aptera is probably the most exciting electric vehicle startup company that I've had my eye on for a while because they fit my demographic like so perfectly. I don't need a family vehicle because here at home I just live with my wife and I live in a very, very sunny climate, so the idea of an affordable electric vehicle with extremely high range that can also charge from the sun is like my dream perfect vehicle. But of course, when I originally displayed the numbers and the prices of everything, a lot of people were very skeptical. They were like, what? The concept of a $45,000 electric vehicle that can go 1,000 miles on a charge, how is this possible? This seems way too good to be true. And I think a healthy amount of skepticism is a good thing. And there's a lot of science and numbers that Aptera is using to come to these specifications, which of course are not official. They're not confirmed. They have not done EPA tests yet. They don't even have a production model really ready yet. They have lots of prototype units, and I appreciate them for covering almost every stage of the development process. They've been going in detail in their videos about the powertrain development, battery development, the suspension development, the solar cell development, and the idea of getting 700 watts on a vehicle about this size worth of solar cells does seem pretty believable to me, and the idea of having a drastically lower drag coefficient than anything else on the road today also seems believable because it's like the most optimum aerodynamic shape you can possibly get, which is basically a teardrop on wheels. Going with 3 wheels also allows them to have less drag resistance on the road with less touch points, and they're using this special lightweight composite for the entire body, so the idea of it weighing substantially less than a Tesla Model 3 makes sense to me. But the biggest challenge, the main reason they're able to display, the starting price being $26,000 with 250 miles of range, and then a $30,000 trim with 400-mile range, they're getting those range numbers on the assumption that their vehicle can achieve 100 watt-hours per mile, which is pretty much unheard of on average with most electric vehicles out today. There are certainly some road tests where we've seen standard range Model 3s dip quite a bit below 200 watt-hours per mile, but basically, in order for Aptera to reach these numbers, where essentially a 25 kilowatt-hour battery pack can take you 250 miles on a charge, they're going to have to hit the average of 100 watt-hours per mile, which is less than half the average watt-hours per mile of a standard range Model 3. The question then becomes, can the lightweight composite, the aerodynamic design, and of course a bit less practicality with there not being a second row, there not being 4 doors, there not being a frunk, with all the things they take out, can they get less than half of the average watt-hours per mile of one of the most efficient electric vehicles on the road? Probably my biggest question for Aptera that I would love to ask them about is how exactly they plan to hit 100 watt-hours per mile between their entry model with a 25 kilowatt hour pack, and they also assume they're going to hit those same range numbers with a 100 kilowatt hour pack, and that's supposed to be how they hit 1,000 miles. Now, the tricky thing I have with that subject is the fact that depending on the battery size within a vehicle, your car is going to weigh a lot more or a lot less. So the 25 kilowatt hour Aptera is going to weigh substantially less than the 100 kilowatt hour Aptera, and I'm curious if they're aiming to get 100 watt hours per mile on just the base model, or if they think that'll be the average across the entire lineup, because a standard range Model 3, which is extremely efficient and fairly lightweight right now, that's rocking like a 55 to 60 kilowatt hour battery pack, and the Aptera, for its first couple of trims, should be rocking a 25 kilowatt hour and 40 kilowatt hour pack, so the battery's gonna weigh less, and then the overall vehicle is gonna weigh a lot less because of all of the things they take out and of how much more aerodynamic it is. But once you start creeping into the 100 kilowatt hour battery pack, that's a very large, very heavy battery, and it's just physics that's going to consume more energy per mile than their entry-level model. So this is an aspect of their business I would love to see them go into more detail about, how exactly they can get the watt-hours per mile that good, because that's really the major key to their product. Getting a vehicle much cheaper by using less batteries makes a ton of sense to me, because obviously a 25 kilowatt hour pack is going to cost substantially less than a 55 or 60 kilowatt hour pack, which is what Tesla is using in their $40,000 vehicles. So to make a $26,000 vehicle that gets to skip a lot of the manufacturing complexities of that car kind of makes sense to me. And also the numbers that a lot of people think sounded way too good to be true is the idea that the solar panels on the Aptera would get you up to around 40 miles of range added per day if you're parked in the sun. They're calculating that because of the 700 watts that are coded over the vehicle, and of course with the assumption that you're going to consume about about 100 watt hours per mile. That means what you would charge directly from the sun would give you about 0.4 kilowatt hours, and that small amount of energy can take you over the average daily driving routine. So that's a killer feature of the entire product, I think. That's why I personally don't believe the Model 2 or Tesla's 25K model would be any threat to the Aptera, because it still wouldn't be able to basically charge itself over time, and the Model 2 is probably going to cap out at around 300 miles of range, whereas the Aptera, most of its trims are going 400 miles or further, so it kind of fits a completely different demographic. Obviously not great for the family vehicle where you want 5 people to all crowd in and pack all their luggage together, but single people or couples that don't have kids or couples that don't have to drive around people in their daily life, this is going to be far more affordable, far more efficient, of course, assuming they're able to hit that 100 watt hours per mile. That's the key to making sure every other specification of this vehicle can work. But the primary reason I'm still excited for Aptera as a company, and it's also really encouraging to know that they're working with Monroe and Associates on their mass production process, and I love how transparent they're being with their audience about what they're developing and what they're working on. Main reason I'm still excited is that, let's say, worst case scenario, they don't hit that number, all right? They don't achieve 100 watt hours per mile on average, or maybe they do achieve that, but it's only on the lighter weight Apteras. It's only if you get the 25 kilowatt hour or the 40 kilowatt hour pack. But let's say the larger battery packs increases the weight too much and they're not able to achieve 100 watt hours per mile, and the range numbers end up being, I don't know, 30% worse than they actually anticipated them being. I'm still super duper impressed, because even if they're 30% worse than what Aptera is claiming, that's going to result in a $45,000 vehicle that can still go 700 miles on a single charge. I think that's what gets me the most excited, is like, okay, even if they don't achieve these great milestones they're aiming for, they're still going to have a killer product on their hands, and the 600 mile range would turn into over 500 mile range on a vehicle that's cheaper than the standard range Model 3, and yet it can take you over 500 miles, and you can literally charge it anywhere that there's sunlight. You wouldn't even have to plug it in. I know where I live, I would definitely never even have to charge this vehicle because of how little me and my wife are driving currently, and there's so much sun where I am. I would probably get over 100 miles of range in between drives. So knowing that Tesla is also opening up their supercharging network to third parties means that the Aptera will be able to supercharge at any supercharge location, assuming they either take Tesla's connector or you just gotta buy an adapter that you use at superchargers. And knowing how efficient this vehicle is trying to be means that I think they're going to achieve some incredible numbers that are going to be very difficult to beat unless you design a vehicle this lightweight, this aerodynamic, and this is a small piece of the market. I don't think it's going to outsell any four-door sedan or any SUV or something like that, but I think it will be a very, very popular one still, and Aptera is probably going to dominate it, assuming they are able to bring this vehicle to production, which I really hope they can. Let me know what your guys' biggest concerns are with the Aptera. Personally, I kind of trust the roll cage Formula 1 racing tech that they're putting into this thing, so I don't think it's going to be as dangerous as people think. But let me know all your questions and concerns down in the comments below. Of course, if you want to reserve an Aptera, you can get $30 off on the link in the description. Thank you all for watching. Hope you have an excellent rest of your day. Take care.